Yeah, we've got that. Okay, so here, if you're just joining us later and you're watching this recording, my name's Scott Alexander. I'm going to be chairing proceedings today. I'm on the MII Council and I'm the conference organiser for the annual conference this year. The panellists today are Anna Doyle, who's disappeared off my screen at the minute, but she might be coming back. She's the International Network Coordinator of the MII, is 17 years a mediator and an international public servant for 5 decades, working mainly in areas of justice, safety of air navigation and business ethics. She now specialises in international workplace mediation from her practice in Waterloo in Belgium, serving the UN Global Mediation Panel and other international organisations. We're also joined by Bob Cree-Hay, who is another MII council member like me, and following a career in corporate project recovery roles, Bob Cree-Hay now practices as a mediator and dispute negotiator. Bob is both CEDAR and MII accredited and has been assisting clients resolving contractual performance and technical disputes in the major programme and project management space for the last 20 years. He acts primarily in commercial workplace civil sector with a focus on small and medium enterprises, family-owned businesses, partnerships and individuals. And you've now moved into family mediation, I believe, as well, Bob.
Indeed.
Couples. Yep. And our guest panelist today is Avril Sheridan. Avril is a former litigation solicitor of 22 years experience who has seen the light and is now a full-time mediator with particular expertise in the area of separating couples. With a focus on client-centric solutions, Avril is proud to offer her expertise in navigating complex family dynamics. Her background equips her to guide you through the intricacies of conflict resolution, ensuring a swift and effective path forward. So, Avril, coming to you first and taking your swift and effective path, what were the main lessons you took from that video?
I've kind of, the lessons I took from it relate to my non-mediation work, which is quasi-judicial work. And it's what informs your decision making. And it's when you're a decision maker making a decision on sort of particular issues, if you come across behavior which is abhorrent and somebody has been involved in abhorrent behavior, it's very hard not to be biased and prejudiced, because you think they're not suitable to be a doctor, they shouldn't be a doctor, they should be struck off, and that's your immediate bias. So the only way I have to deal with that bias is I have to kind of flip myself into what did the person who made the complaint, what did they feel, what actually happened to them? And I keep having to flip. And I think that's what you need to do as a scout. You need to be able to flip from one to the other, the same as you do in mediation. That's just my view of it. That's what I took out of it. But everybody has a bias. There is no doubt about it. It's trying to control that bias all the time is difficult. Yeah.
Okay, so you're almost saying, well, look, the normal reaction to somebody who is abhorrent, to use your word, is to fight, argue, resist,
yes,
change,
yeah,
whatever. And in order to perhaps do the job as a mediator, you've got to try and look beyond that and say, well, what impact is that having, not on me, but on someone else? I'm trying to put myself in that position. Is that okay? Well, that's a different take from me, and the thing which is good. We like difference in this world. Anna Doyle, are you here somewhere?
Yeah, I'm here, Scott.
Oh, here you come. You're not on my screen, that's all. Sorry, Anna. What would be your main take from this particular video?
Yeah, I have to say, one of the things I love about these TED Talks or TED Listens, as I like to call them, is I like to take the thread, you know, the thread of what I've seen, and just follow that thread and see where it takes me, you know. And I thought it was very, very interesting picking up the thread of this, because first of all, I didn't know about the incident. So, but then when I actually zoomed out and followed the thread a little bit more, I could see it in context. It was absolutely a huge political scandal. And it led, I discovered then, to Émile Zola at the time writing this letter, you know, to the state of France, J'accuse, you know, where he was accusing the French administration of having totally, you know, mishandled the situation. And that, of course, had its own serious consequences. But I discovered subsequently that there was a film made about this in 2018. She didn't mention it, so maybe she recorded that actually beforehand. I don't know, but it was a film made by Roman Polanski, and Polanski made this film about Dreyfus. And some people say that Polanski almost envisaged himself of being in a similar role to Dreyfus, having been wronged and you know, being accused of things that he said he didn't do, but that was okay. I think he said, well, let me not get into that. But it was very interesting then to see, you know, that this is still very, very current, to this day. And the name Dreyfus, again, following the thread a little bit further, I discovered that Julia Dreyfus, who stars in the Seinfeld comedies, that she is actually a direct descendant of the original Dreyfus. She who was actually born a millionaire. But she so it didn't do the family any harm, apparently, down through the years. But it's interesting. So then I kept following the thread, and you know, I realized you don't have to look too far to find very comparable stories in the news and in the papers these days. Just last evening, listening to the scandal, you know, the blood transfusion scandal in the UK. Listening for the last couple of weeks on the absolutely abysmal treatment that was meted out to those people in the sub-post offices in the UK. You know, where these people were just running their post offices. They were ordinary, decent, working people, but they were accused in the wrong. You know, I mean, this is a warning for AI for the future, maybe. But these people were accused in the wrong of fraud and the consequences that it had on them, and really. It's Dreyfus all over again. And as I say, there are so many different examples that you can find of it in the media nowadays. So what you think is maybe just an isolated incident, when you follow the thread, it really speaks loud and clear to me very much at the moment. So I thought this was a great choice. Well done, Scott. You picked a good one. Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. I suppose if you're one of those accused ones, or you think that you've been accused and in the wrong, turning to Bob just about the theme here, it would make you kind of angry. It would make you more like a soldier, as well as believing that you're the scout. So what's your take on this particular video about why you think you're right even when you're wrong?
Yeah, it was for me, it was fascinating, because having I'll come back to it later on, no doubt, but having been that military officer myself, and having been a scout and a warrior, you do wear different hats. And of course, in mediation, we wear different hats. But when you find yourself on the receiving end of that, so and one of these sessions wouldn't be what they are without me complaining initially. So I want to complain, and that is that, you know, since we started these sessions, I've had to expand my toolkit. Emotional intelligence, intellectual humility, the capacity for compassion, conversational competence, and I've had to stop being a jerk. And now you're asking me to consider that I might be wrong. So that's a big ask. It's a huge ask.
First time for everything, Bob.
Absolutely. So that's my reaction to it, is that, you know, when you're on the receiving end of this, then your focus becomes very narrow. So if we can imagine what it's like to be in the receiving end, but more importantly, our role is to understand the truth and the facts as they pertain to the clients and what their frame of reference is. Because actually, the one thing she never mentioned in any of this, and not that she was required to, is people's frame of reference. And your frame of reference can be a real handicap when it comes to understanding the truth. So that's what I took away from this.
Sure.
And groupthink, the power and failures of groupthink.
Yeah, we can all fall into that. And I suppose the Dreyfus story there, I just see that Niall, I think it was, who dropped in and says, yes, j'accuse an officer and a spy. It's also a book by Robert Harris, if you want to read that. It was very good. And you can go visit Zola and Dreyfus in Père Lachaise graveyard in Paris if you want to nip there. Very nice place. Sticking with you, Bob. So you've got these dynamics. You've got somebody, perhaps because it's reinforced, and you've got this groupthink. So again, I'm thinking maybe a divorce case that you might be looking at, or family separation, where positions are being reinforced because the two parties are talking within the family, and it's been reinforced and whatever. So that you've got people coming into the mediation as soldiers wanting to defend the position.
Yeah.
And that's based on mindsets, as Julia Galef is chatting about. So how do you shift? How do you shift mindsets from people and get them into this yearn for scouty thing? Or how do you even move them at all? How do you break that down?
I think perhaps it's important to sort of throw that back a wee bit and say, yeah, is our role changing mindsets? Because we need to be careful. But for me, in our role as media and the scout, like there are many parallels between scouting and mediation. We have much in common. Because if you look at a scout, you've got three roles: secure information that will contribute to the overall picture, and to interpret the opposition's intentions, but that's based on how they've chosen to do two things: place their assets and deploy their resources. But actually in mediation, it's probably more about understanding how and why people are organizing their defenses. And that's quite important. But to lighten the mood for a second, as a scout, it's actually quite a perilous occupation, because you're going to be lightly armed and you're going to be in enemy territory. So there are three rules for a scout that us mediators might just want to listen to. First of all, see without being seen. So how do you, as a mediator, occupy that space in the mediation without being seen? Because you are trying to gain information. But here's a really important point. You do not engage at this stage. So you don't lock horns with the enemy. If you do that as a scout, you have failed. And above all, don't get caught. So I'll leave you with that.
Okay, maybe Anna will come back to you before going to Avril. I mean, looking at what Bob's just been saying in the process there, see without being seen. You know, there is a function for a mediator in influencing parties and moving things through. But you certainly can't be seen to be giving them all the ideas. That's not the job. Yeah. So what would you do there? How would you, if you've got somebody and you're trying to gather this information, you think they're defending a perhaps indefensible position, but an understandable one. What do you move? How do you move? Either, well, Avril's on screen, so maybe go to Avril first and then bring it in.
Okay. Well, what I do, and that is often the position where you get a total family. My brother or my sister says this, and you've the whole family in the room for one party. The only thing you can do is say, oh yes, I understand. I do the usual, you know, I understand your position. Yes. I was wondering if you saw it from, say, Mary's position. Mary says she sees it this way. Have you thought about it like that? It's just, you have to maybe continually move from side to side, because you can't get stuck in one position. You can't let them stay stuck on their rights, because they're never going to get anywhere. That's just my view. So it's maneuvering. I agree, you can't suggest things, but you can suggest, can we think of another way? Can anybody come up with an idea as to what way could this work? What way could it work? Come on, give me some ideas here. And I keep throwing it back to them, because then they're on the spot and they have to then start coming up with solutions. Because other than that, I find you're at risk of feeling, you know, of wanting to say, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Which you can't do.
Yeah.
Because it's not the right answer.
They certainly can't do that. It wouldn't be their solution if you did that.
Yeah,
Anna, coming to
exactly.
you, just picking up again on Bob's point about, seeing but not being seen. So you're trying to influence, you're trying to gather information. So Anna, what's your take on that position, maybe?
Yeah, seeing without being seen.
Mm.
Well, if you say seeing without being seen, that's just using one of our faculties, which is our eyes. You could just as easily say, speaking maybe without being heard. Like touching without touching with words, but without actually touching. So we have to use all of our senses as mediators. Sometimes we'll pick up a glance, a look, a flick of the head, an expression. We have to be really tuned into that. Sometimes we'll hear silence. We'll hear a hesitation. We'll hear somebody one person trying to speak over the other, but maybe just maybe even mentioning the person's name. Maybe just turn, if you have two parties and they're both maybe clamoring to take the space or take the speak next, just to turn to one of them and say, Mary. Just by saying somebody's name can actually be very powerful, because it gives them permission then to speak without in any way controlling the other person, but by just, as I say, acknowledging the person's name. And I think what Avril and Bob have been saying is really very, very interesting. There's so many different elements to this, but I think when you have a combination of these elements, when you have a combination of the justice aspect, or you have the combination of needing to go on reconnaissance maneuvers, but not actually engaging with the enemy, as they say, just yet, or with the other party. When you have a combination of these things, it really makes things very, very complex. And I think when you get stuck in a situation, if you get accused of something, we can all think from personal experience, was there something that you were ever accused of that you didn't do, and you're proclaiming your interest, proclaiming your innocence? It can be something that can actually stay with you for a very, very, very long time. I had a personal experience of this, just an anecdote. I remember when I was very young, my father was a great singer, and I always wanted to impress my dad, So I remember joining the choir with some of my friends in school. So it was coming up to Easter, and we were called in to do in our church, there was this 40 hours adoration where you had to go along and learn all the songs and sing all the songs. I was about 9 or 10 years of age at the time. But anyway, I remember going along to this, learning all of the songs, the Tantum Ergo, the O Salutaris Ostia, all of these things. And I remember in the middle of the singing, the church was full. The choir mistress turned around and said, "There's a crow in the choir," and we kept singing, but she turned and she pointed at me and my friend Ann Dillon, who was beside me, and she says, "You and Ann Dillon, stop singing." And I think, oh my God, stop singing. And all I could think of was my dad was in the congregation down below. Is he going to notice that I've stopped singing, And I remember going home, and I was absolutely horrified, terrified, because I didn't know, was I the crow in the choir? So we went back into school the next day on the Monday, and she said, "It's either you or Ann Dillon are the crow in the choir, but I haven't got the time to find out who it is." So so that was it. So I would have been, as I say, 9 or 10. That stayed with me for my whole life.
Yeah.
And I didn't sing. But for a significant birthday a few years ago, a friend of mine who knew the story, she gave me the gift of 2 singing lessons. When I opened the envelope, I said, 2 singing lessons? And she said, yes. She says, "You need it." She says, "I'm your friend. I'm telling you, this is what you have to do." And I say, no, I can't do it. I'm the crow in the choir. To make long story short, I went along for my 2 singing lessons, terrified. And after him playing some notes and getting me to sing along and all the rest of it, he asked me why was I there, and I told him I needed to know, was I the crow in the choir? And at the end of it, he said to me, after testing me on all the scales, he said, "You're not the crow," but he said, "You are a soprano." And I can tell you, in that moment, I let go, like 50 years or so of angst that I suddenly said,
Yeah.
yes, I'm not a crow. And I came home and my family said, how did you get on? I said, I'm a soprano.
You're
And it was so
the
funny.
you're the nightingale, Anna.
No, I'm not going to sing. I'm not going to sing today. But it's just how being accused of something,
Yeah.
you know, the pain of that can actually freeze you, so that you just, I'm making up for it now maybe, but you just don't open your mouth.
Yeah.
You know, you don't do something that you love.
Okay, can I come to?
Sorry, I got carried away.
That's okay. That's all. That's I know it's a good story. We like stories here. Bob, if I can maybe come to you, the situation there where Anna's chatting about the impact that something has, the trauma, where it was important. So something's happened. She was in the choir. Something happened. It's wrecked the whole experience. When people come to mediation, I don't know about you. I don't think I've had any people that have come to mediation to me twice. You know what I mean? They do it once. It's a big thing for them. They've come to mediation. They've never been there before. And the impact of what we could say or what could happen in that mediation could be really powerful because it's very important to them because it's the first time they've ever tried it. So what is it about the mediation and the mindset? And I can see there, Lily agreeing with Bob, mediators, we need to be aware of our own mindset first. What do we need to be sure about before we go into mediation, knowing that it's a traumatic experience for some people, or could be?
It's something I've said a number of times in these sessions, and that is that we must never, ever underestimate the courage that it takes for people to come to mediation. Because litigation and other methods of getting what you want or resolving do not come at the same personal investment and cost. And even when Anna was telling that story, I could feel the sting of that. Now, I've got a bit of a trick because I've got the privilege of being an identical twin. So I spent most of my life that when you're accused of something, you do have a So now the downside to that is so does my identical twin brother. So, and occasionally teachers, and this goes back, so for those of you of a certain demographic, cover your ears. In school, teachers would not hesitate to punish the two of you because then that way they definitely get the right one. So it can backfire. But I think that mindset for me is understand that you know nothing.
Yeah.
You do not have any idea of where these people are coming from, where they're going, how they might get there, and how they got here. So I'm going to quote Abraham Lincoln at this stage, and that is that if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to spend 4 hours sharpening my axe. And that is our role in exploration, in mediation, as with reconnaissance. You are going to spend quite some time in exploration, because reconnaissance, as with exploration, it can be a risky old business, but actually that's where the gold is. Because most of the time you don't know where things stand. You may be operating in hostile territory. You're going to need luck, discretion, and intelligence, as in military intelligence. And actually the minefield that is underlying interest is not going to be signposted. You may turn round in a field and it will say, there's a sign that's got nothing on it. And when you reach over the fence and look on the other side of it, it says, do not enter a minefield. It's too late. Yeah. And to go back to my earlier point, getting caught is really embarrassing. So choosing your language and your mindset. So it's really, really important. But most of the time, you'll be operating in the dark. But to go back to our TEDx presenter today, beware seeing what you want to see. So this comes back to the mindset. And poor old Dreyfus, once they had decided that they'd seen what they needed to see. So we can breadcrumb our clients, but we mustn't lead them. But we can breadcrumb them because our art and our skill and our experience tells us some of the things of what we're hearing are important. And it's perhaps inviting them into that understanding. But absolutely, placing the emphasis on the wrong things because it helps fill your gaps is wrong. And the risks of confirmation bias and assumptive leaps. I'm going to get a CPD point from Jerry O'Sullivan for using assumptive leap. So I hope Jerry watches this later on, because we are scouts and we are not warriors, but we do need to have a scout mindset, but we sometimes need to be prepared to fulfill the role of warrior, because this is tough stuff.
Okay. Can I maybe move to Avril next? I mean, you've heard what Bob said there about the role of the mediator being much more akin to the scout. Sometimes you have to wear
Oh,
the
I think it absolutely is.
which is fine, but you also heard him because he's done it. It's scary, right? It's scary sometimes being a
Yeah.
scout. You're not just gathering information. You could get shot. You're not well protected. Sometimes you'll have scouts and soldiers in the room as the parties. And there was an incident at a mention at the beginning of Julia Galef's presentation about adrenaline, and I was wondering about the impact of adrenaline in the room, because people's mindset changes when the adrenaline's flowing and you're having to calm them down. But more than that, she mentioned this thing about being a position where you're almost ashamed to change your paradigm, right? You're ashamed to move from where you were. You went in there.
Yeah.
So how can we as mediators move somebody from being in a position where they came in thinking, I'm going to bash this one over the head, or I'm going to win my thing, or I've always been right on this, to and being ashamed to let go of that, to being proud that they found the right answer. This is this yearning question she talked about. How would you deal with that if I'm I don't know, let's say I'm a party in a family dispute that you're dealing with, and I think my wife deserved to get no money because she just wasted. I don't know, whatever you deal with, I don't deal with family mediation. So how would you move somebody where they're in a position where they believe it's to be right and it's not helping, or something has to change, a dynamic has to change? What would you do?
What often happens, I think, when you have somebody that gets into that position, they also attack you as the mediator and say, you're on their side, you're on their side. And so you end up then getting into position because the adrenaline is high. Suddenly your adrenaline starts rising and you start defending yourself, and that's where you can end up in a terrible situation. So, what do you do? I think you have no choice but to start using shuttle mediation at that stage, because there is no way one party is going to back down. They can't. So that's where I break people then into separate rooms, and then you can kind of, because they're more open and more relaxed and they're not so afraid to say something to you as the mediator. So if you can even get permission to bring back some part of a changed message, that makes progress. But that's just what you do in reality. But often it does, involve you getting attacked for being on either side. So I immediately just was like, no, I think what we'll do now, I think we'll start doing separate sessions, because that's the only way I can break it. That's what I do. But maybe there's other ways of breaking it. Maybe you've other ideas for me.
Oh, well, we might have, you never know what's going to happen in these TED Talks.
Yeah.
Anna, what about you, where you've got somebody who's taken a fixed position? They're a soldier, they want to prove they're right, even though they may or may not be wrong. We're trying to be a scout. How would you shift them from that position of shame to change?
Yeah, I think self-awareness is really, really important. Self-awareness as a mediator. And I tell you, one of the I see Jack is on the call with us here today, and I'm sure Jack will agree with me. But one of the most educational and informative experiences I've had recently was something that the Mediators Institute of Ireland organised, and I think you'll find the tape of it is probably on the MII website. But it was a 1-hour presentation by somebody from the association called As I Am. And they deal with raising awareness of the autistic, of what it's like to be on the autistic spectrum. And it was absolutely fantastic. If you get a chance of looking at that video, I must check and see that it is on the MII website. It was just brilliant, because it kind of turned the tables on me. And it made me realize that if I'm in a situation where I'm dealing with somebody who is on the autism spectrum, how I can react can actually be very disturbing for them. I'll give you an example. I was in Dewberry's bookshop when I was home the last time. And I went in, I was buying some wrapping paper for a present. And I was measuring the present against the wrapping paper. I had it on the little stool beside the window there upstairs in Dewberry's. And somebody came in and they actually sat down on the middle of my wrapping paper. And I mean, I was just absolutely horrified. I looked and said, like, and it was a young guy with his mother. And I turned to him and I said, oh, I mean, sorry, what are you doing? That's my wrapping paper. And the mother said to me, sorry, she said, my son is on the autism spectrum. She said, you know, he doesn't mean any offense. And then she brought him over to the side. And I was absolutely mortified. And it reminded me of this talk that I had been given by As I Am to the MII. It was about really raising our awareness for how we ourselves can behave in situations where we're looking to see what's normal behavior. You know what I mean? It just makes you really aware that for a person to be maybe attacking you, it looks like an attack, but it's not. It's where they are from either their situation, or it could be from a situation of grief or a situation of pain within mediation. But afterwards, I remembered this and I went to the mother and I said, I'm really sorry. I said, I didn't realize. And she said, it's a learning experience for everybody. And I turned to her son and I apologized and I said, please excuse me. I said, this is a learning experience for me as well. So we have to really have that mindset in a way when we're going into mediations. Every mediation is such a learning experience, but that experience with the autism was a huge learning experience for me. And that's why I like these exchanges, because it gives us the opportunity to kind of hold a mirror up to ourselves and see, where can we do something a little bit better? You know, how can we catch ourselves in the act of making a mess of something and learn from it and maybe share that experience, you know?
Were you looking to come in, Jack? I see you're...
Yeah, I thought it was actually amazing. I was completely bowled over by it. And it takes me back to a point that Bob was making about the mediator see without being seen. I think that's deeply treacherous. That's just my way of looking at it. You're not there to reconnoiter. You're there to be identified as to what your role is. You must be seen. You're not there to get people to talk out loud. And nobody ever comes to mediation in the wrong. You know, they're always right. They come to mediation to prove that the other person is wrong. So it's really, you need to be seen for what you are, what your function is. But coming back to Anna's point, I think everybody, and I've raised this for you too, Scott, about making that accessible, that video accessible to everybody. Because not only does it deal with autism, but it deals with our whole perception about how we assume or presume, whichever word you want to use, weigh other people there and what their case is and what their reason for being there is as well. Mediators, we think in a straight line, but we have to be in a position where we can duck and dive for whatever necessity it throws at us. It's really about how you approach the whole thing yourself. But I would take issue with Bob, not offensively, but saying, see, don't be seen. You know, what sort of mediation is that?
Okay,
You know,
well, Bob, I have to bring in Bob here. Bob.
No, and it's a timely reminder of perception, and I think Anna's point about the presentation and Jack's perception both of that and my position. So my point is that when you're plying your trade, when you're doing that reconnoitering, when you're scouting yourself, because ultimately you're trying to establish a picture, and you will help them build that picture, and ultimately that picture will become owned by the parties. And I absolutely take your point. So this is not a defensive response, but I don't think that there's a role for you to be seen in how you do that. So don't, it's not about you. You're doing the role very visible, absolutely very visible. So there's nothing underhand about it, but it's nothing to do with you. It's not about you. It's about how you play your trade. That's the bit that I don't want to be seen, because you are getting out of your own way, because ultimately your aim is to help the parties get out of their own way. And I absolutely take your point, Jack. No one turns up at mediation in the wrong, and they certainly don't turn up to unpick their own arguments. Because when they first turn up, they lack one thing, and that's the full picture. They lack information. And that's certainly in the exploration phase, that's really important. But
Yeah, I suppose just coming in there, what I picked up from what you were saying, Bob, was that there are times when we step back and observe, and we pick up all this other information that gives us ideas about where to move the mediation, and come back with that information. It wasn't that we're in there almost as an ornament in the corner, just observing the type of thing. So maybe there's different ways of seeing things, but I think there are roles for observing. And for me, it was a bit like when you're coaching. You know, you ask the question, the coachee should be doing most of the talking. So it's just about balance.
Yes.
Now, Avril, I see you looking to come in here on different different issues as well, and the fact that you raised when you should move a caucus or not have a caucus, when you've got to break the people, when it's getting too heated, and I suppose we were chatting beforehand about the art and the skill. And the art is knowing when to use your skills. So looking at that, we've got people who are, again, in the fixed positions perhaps, or you see them slightly changing. When would you seize on that opportunity? Do you have any examples, without breaking confidence, obviously?
There isn't, because I think every case is so individual. So it's only when you're exploring and asking more questions, gosh, tell me how that would work. What's going to happen? And it's only when you're exploring that you can actually suddenly somebody will say something. So you're almost waiting for somebody to say something. It's but you still are exploring. And then sometimes I will sit back a little and let them get into the conversations when they've moved into the situation where they can actually start speaking to each other, which sometimes obviously at the beginning they can't. So, and let's see what flows from that, because that's often where an actual flow or an actual concession is made. It's when they actually speak to each other, having gone over this rights situation, they then do move. But I don't know whether that's helpful to anybody.
So you're shifting them over this Rubicon of the aggressive, soldierly type position into, I have now seen something. And we've all had mediations like that, where the people turn from I hate you to I want to hug you, right? These total transformational ones, which are very important. But there's also another issue that comes through, which is that it's a bit like me. I support a team called Hearts, right? Very good team. Don't win much. But I couldn't ever give up supporting Hearts, because that would mean that I've just wasted 60 years of my life. You know what I mean? Supporting a rotten team. I've got to believe it. I can't get over the shame of letting go of that. I have to hang on to that position. And how do you help deal with that? They've come to a realization, you've got into a room where there's movement. Are there any kind of tidying up work that mediators might do there, just to help people? Because it's traumatic. You've changed your position.
Yeah, I think you can do that. And like your football team, Scott, in that context, you're a fan. Okay, you're a fan, and the duty of a fan is to cheer for the team, even if they're being beaten 20-0. So you're a cheerleader for them. But in a way, isn't that what a mediator is as well? You know, you are there, you're a fan as well. You want both of them. You want both of the parties to succeed. You know, you want them to come out with something that they can both stand over and that they're proud of, and that they can walk away and say, yeah, that was a good day. That was a good agreement. So I think there's no shame in the mediator saying, look, you know, I'm struggling a little bit here. I'm a little bit stuck. So let me just speak out loud for the moment, and let me maybe use the narrative of what I understand the situation to be, kind of to summarize in a way. And then you intervene and you tell me, you know, where I'm wrong or where I haven't got the full picture. And then you go into a summary, a narrative, as I heard you saying at the outset, and then you said this, and then you came in, and then you were very helpful. You said this, and so on. And you're actually just, you're playing, not so much playing the game, but you're playing out something in front of them. Yeah. And you're giving them something, like you as a fan for your team. They can shout, you know, oh, that was a foul, or yeah, no, hooray, that was a wonderful move. Or they can even in magic moments turn to each other and say, yeah, that was good that you said that. I'd forgotten about that. You know, yeah, thanks for that. It might be the first time that they've said thanks to each other in a long time. And suddenly you're getting them in agreement, perhaps about what a lousy mediator you are, because you're not coming up with the solution for them. But you know what I mean? You're changing the dynamic from a binary, and you're opening up that triangulating that space, and you're giving them the space to play their own game, you know, and then you're giving them the space also to move from being in opposition to kind of playing on the same side. I think your analogy of a football match is pretty good, yeah.
There you go. Thank you very much. We're going to wind up now. Bob, any final thing?
Just to say, you have to know, if you can make it clear to the parties that you're a fan of mediation.
Yeah, exactly.
And get them to say, well, we want to be a fan of mediation as well. It's something everybody in the room has in common.
Yeah, I'm going to have to cut you off there, Jack, because I have to finish
before you finish, I want to say something quickly that Jack says. Can I encourage everybody? There's a rebooting mediation questionnaire, which is about rebooting mediation in Europe. And if you just go online and say rebooting mediation, especially on LinkedIn, there's a questionnaire that you can fill in and have your say about the future of mediation. Thanks, Jack, for reminding me of that. Sorry, Scott.
Thank you very much, Anna. It doesn't take very long. I've done it. So, Bob, good. Finally with you. So this thing's coming in.
I was taken by. So the final. I'm just going to read her final question. So her final question was, what do you most yearn for? Do you yearn to defend your own beliefs, or do you yearn to see the world as clearly as you possibly can? I think in mediation, we can't see it as binary as that. And I think to have parties settle on agreement that best matches their needs is ultimately where we want to get. And remembering that the people who come to mediation have put their warrior mindset to one side and have, to some extent, become scouts, and we need to reward that courage. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Much, Bob. Okay, thanks everyone. We're just going to wind up here. I think Bob's got a final slide somewhere for us to have a look at. Our next meeting is on the 18th of June, 1 o'clock as usual. This video will be circulated around, but on the 18th of June, and we're going to be looking at another really interesting one. Empathy is not endorsement. This is from Dylan Marin. He's a digital creator. He's racked up millions of views for projects like Every Single Word and Sitting in Bathrooms with Trans People. But he's found that the flip side of success online is internet hate. Over time, he's developed an unexpected coping mechanism, calling the people who leave him insensitive comments and asking a simple question: why did you write that? So here, lots of questions there about why we ever use the word why. In a thoughtful talk about how we interact online, Marin explains how sometimes the most subversive thing you can do is actually speak with the people you disagree with, not simply at them. Listen to his podcast, Conversations with People Who Hate Me, wherever you get your podcast. So that'll be on the 18th of June. Hope you join us. And the MII conference is coming up on the 18th and 19th of October. You'll be getting details shortly. Hope you can join us all in Belfast, where we'll have Baroness Cathy Ashton, Nita Yawanaraja, and Monica Hanaway as guest speakers. So thanks very much, everybody. Hope to see you again soon. And take care. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,